Welcome to another session with Kiki and Friends. I'm the author Francesca Hepton. I thought it would be useful to broach the subject of low self-esteem, which is on the other side of the spectrum to self-confidence, which we always talk about here, with Kiki, our super confident kitty. And this program will be looking at 6 telltale signs that will help you identify if your child may be suffering from low self-esteem, low self-confidence. Don't overanalyze, please, and see problems where there aren't any. Just keep a lookout. I think that is probably the most we can do and the best we can do, not to create problems where there aren't any, but to be ever vigilant for our children to ensure we are giving them the best possible care we can. I will give you a few signs, as I say, 6 in total, of ways that you can identify if your child or children are suffering from this effects of low self-esteem. And then obviously I will point you in the direction of ways you can help them with the help of Kiki and Friends, or other ways without the magnificent stories that we provide you here. Up to you, completely up to you. I'm also going to throw in a few interesting statistics just to back up why I feel it's really important to address this subject, because low self-esteem can obviously spiral and accelerate into different traits and even illnesses. Let's go into it then. The post is addressed to parents, caregivers and educators on the blog site. And here I urge everybody to be attentive to the emotional well-being of children. Self-esteem in particular plays a significant role in a child's overall development. Why? Well, this can affect their learning performance, how they interact with others, so their social interactions, and as I mentioned, their mental health, how they approach things, how they see things in life. And I wrote the blog post with the hope of shedding some light on how to identify low self-esteem in children. Primarily, we are looking at children aged 4 to 6, the readers of the Kiki and Friends stories. But also you can throw your net further afield and include younger ones, toddlers, aged 2 to 3 as well. And all my statistics and research have been focused on the USA and the UK. So I thought I would add those in because it is quite startling, as you'll find out, how the numbers tot up for childhood depression, how this affects obesity, high levels of anxiety. And so what we can do about that, that's what I'm going to also address, what we can do through early intervention. So first of all, let's dive into understanding self-esteem in our young children. What does it refer to? In this post, for our purposes, we are looking at self-esteem in terms of a child's overall sense of self-worth and self-value, how they value themselves, how they see themselves. And in children aged 4 to 6, this is still in the formative stages. So they're still learning. Their entire identity is still being formed, the way that they perceive and digest, and then apply things that they have learned, seen, or experienced, is still under development and can be influenced by various factors such as how they interact with their caregivers, adults in general, with their peers, so other children of a similar age, and the environment that they find themselves in. So all those things play a huge role in your child's self-perception, in their self-worth. Who's raising them, how they're being raised, both at home and at school and in other clubs and associations they may attend, their peers, who they are playing with, who they are interacting with on a social basis or in the classroom, and the setting that they find themselves in. That's why we always talk about having a nurturing and positive, but challenging still, environment. The 6 signs that I wanted to highlight, the 6 common signs of low self-esteem, are by no means exhaustive. The first one has had a lot of attention. It is negative self-talk. And it's had a lot of attention, not just in the realms of children, but also adults. Adults seem to do this a lot. And perhaps if we can address this issue at a young age, then the amount of adults suffering from negative self-talk would also diminish. This may include the use of negative words when they talk about themselves, such as, I'm not good enough, I can't do anything right, I'm useless, I'm stupid. Things that maybe you have caught yourself saying to yourself. However, negative self-talk is quite evident. Look out for it and see if your child or a child in your care uses it often, if they are continuously putting themselves down. The second sign would be avoiding challenges. If the child avoids trying new activities, tasks that they may find challenging or outside their comfort zone, if they fear failure or being teased or ridiculed by others. So the second sign is essentially focusing on a child that does not want to go out of their comfort zone and prefers to do nothing, prefers not to engage, and would rather stay in the safe zone than be an object of potential teasing, and doesn't have the strength to deal with that or deal with the challenges that a new activity might require of them. The third sign is excessive self-criticism, linked in some ways to negative self-talk. But in this instance, it is where the child is overly critical of their own mistakes and doesn't see mistakes as a way of growing. They cannot accept mistakes. There's a sort of finality to the fact that they made a mistake. And in conjunction with that, they have a strong fear of disappointing others. This could be as a result of parents or the child themselves placing too much pressure on them to succeed. In the framework of a growth mindset, a child that doesn't suffer from low self-esteem would welcome challenges, would welcome even failures as ways of learning and growing and understanding things more, as an opportunity to build on, as a stepping stone in their own personal furtherment and development. But a child, on the other hand, with low self-esteem would withdraw and be recalcitrant in the face of failure, essentially, of doing things wrong. And if you see this constantly, so it all ties together. They see themselves as inept, as incapable, so they don't want to try anything, they don't want to fail, and they don't want to put themselves out there. If they're constantly doing this, then the alarm bells should start to ring in your mind. So this is if they're often negative self-talk, avoiding challenges, and excessive self-criticism. I'll go on to what we can do to help later on. Another sign would be social withdrawal, in the sense that they don't want to be with others because they feel that they don't like them, which is quite sad, or they feel that they're not interesting enough for other people to want to talk to them. So it's not a case that they're shy and don't want to put themselves forward in that sort of awkward sense, but it's already them judging themselves as not being interesting, as other people not really wanting to get to know them because they already have delivered that sentence on themselves that they are not interesting and that they're not worth getting to know. So they don't even try to put themselves forwards. If you notice a lot of social withdrawal, that would be a sign of low self-esteem. On the other hand, from that, so this is more of a reserved, point number 4 is more of a reserved child. Number 5 would be a child constantly demanding approval. So a child seeking constant approval would always want to have validation and approval from adults and peers. Constantly wanting to be told that they're good, having to have that star, having to have the pat on the back, having to be told that they have done a really good job, and not just enjoying the process of doing something. So they don't just enjoy taking part in the games, they want to be told that they did a really good job when they were in a race, or they did a certain move on a game board, or they have to have that constant approval. And that is exactly the same thing as having that low self-value. Because they can't give themselves that sense of worth, they need other people to give it to them. They need to feel valued, and they can only do that through other people's approval and not their own. So check for that, see if the child is looking for constant approval. The final very common sign of low self-esteem in children is lack of resilience. And this bounces back to failures. If they are in a situation where they have not succeeded, where they have failed, they struggle to recover. They see that as a setback and they don't want to proceed. They don't want to carry on going. As soon as they have failed in one part, so let's say they're trying to learn how to skate and they get onto the ice and that's it, they've fallen over, then they won't try anymore. That's it, they hang their boots up, they're going. In even minor failures, doing a maths problem and not being able to work out the tiniest basics of just 1 + 1, then they won't want to continue. And you might find that they explode, they completely overreact, they have tantrums, and it becomes an emotional disaster because they're distressed by the situation. Or they instead of having an angry outburst, they might withdraw completely, they might cry. There's some sort of an emotional release because everything seems so difficult and stacked against them. They don't feel that they have the resources within them in order to combat these tiny little problems, these tiny little failures, these tiny little setbacks. Keep an eye out for any children who are consistently allowing themselves to be defeated and don't want to try. So lack of resilience is the final telltale sign for this post anyway. And now I want to reiterate again, we should try not to overanalyze our children, but just be aware and see if you notice any of those 6 signs on an ongoing, frequent basis. And obviously, if these behavioral traits persist for a month, whereas before they didn't have them, or if the child has had more than one of the above symptoms, shall we call them, talk to your partner or a professional that you might know on a social basis and how to approach the situation. I believe wholeheartedly that we can and we should try to resolve issues at home before bringing in any outside help. And the best way to bring a child out is indirectly. If you face the problems directly head on and tell them they have a problem and try and deal with it directly, this tends, as I'm sure you will be all too aware of as parents or caregivers, that it tends to make them flare up. It makes them worse. The child becomes defensive. I found, for example, the Kiki's I Can journal brought a lot of issues to light for parents and foster parents, and that perhaps we otherwise wouldn't notice. Maybe the child doesn't bring things up and they don't talk about them. And so I find it's very important to, if you don't have an ongoing dialogue with your child or feel that something is wrong, get them to express themselves indirectly through something like journaling, whether it's drawing or whether it's a mood journal or writing every day. So why is all of this really important? I don't mean to be somebody who is an alarmist. However, there are concerns about mental health in both the United States and the United Kingdom. And I've listed some statistics below. I will just skim over them here and say that approximately 7.1% of children aged between 3 and 17 in the United States were diagnosed with anxiety disorders in 2020. So 7.1% of children between 3 and 17. And 9.4% of children in those ages had depression, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in 2020. None of our children should have either anxiety or depression before I understand perhaps when the hormonal changes come 13, 14, but certainly the children that we're talking about, ages 4 to 6, there shouldn't be this sense of anxiety in their life. We have enough of that as adults. They should be happy, naturally happy, without worries, without concern. And what tends to happen is, just like adults, they tend to feed themselves to cover up these concerns. And that's why the third statistic that I quote is the concern of obesity, with just under 20% of children being obese in 2018. So it is of concern. We want to avoid anxiety, depression, and obesity in our children. And there are similar mental health disorders reported in the UK, stating that 1 in 8 children aged between 5 and 19 had a mental health disorder in England in 2017. And, well, I don't want to depress you any further with that. Let's go on to what we can do to help. I'm going to give some general pointers here, how we can steer our children away from low self-esteem and eventually potential anxiety disorders, depression. And some strategies that you as a parent and caregiver could introduce as support would be open communication. So encourage your child to express their feelings and thoughts openly. It's important to be that patient and active listener to empathize with the child. Open communication, number 1. Number 2, offer praise, not overly. We're not going to constantly validate them. However, you can recognize their efforts if you feel that that would be supportive to them. Help them on the journey of trying rather than just on the goal, on the winning. So that's where the encouragement of praise comes into play. Not to celebrate every tiny little thing like brushing teeth and tying shoelaces, but encouragement and supportive praise. And I think this number 3 is really important. Allow them to be independent, encourage them to be independent. If they have their own tasks to do that are age appropriate, making their bed, putting their clothes away, setting the table, whatever it is, but specifically theirs, tasks that are specifically theirs, then they become a lot more self-reliant. And a self-reliant child will be able to deal with setbacks, will have more increased confidence and increased belief in themselves and their capabilities. And that will help to combat those 6 traits that we mentioned at the beginning. I've mentioned 4 throughout, and this is promoting a growth mindset. And this, as maybe you as an interested parent in all of these early interventions and positive parenting toolkits, you might have already read a lot about growth mindset, which is essentially works on the basis of making mistakes as part of learning and growing, to show that the actual doing of a job or a task or a project is the enjoyment. That is the goal, not the outcome. It's the whole getting involved in something and moving along the path of ups and downs, of failures and successes, and taking them all on board and enjoying them and drawing from them what we can and accepting the defeats and moving on. That is the growth mindset. It's the case of enjoying the process, not the reward. Children enjoyed drawing. There was a study done that those children were then given a reward. I think it was a gold star. I can't remember what the process was exactly. And then after a while, they got used to, habituated to the fact that they would be getting a reward for their drawing, and then they no longer enjoyed the drawing just for the sake of drawing. I think you get the idea. And the final method for intervention and support, as I said, would be outside help. But it has to be professional help. Don't just go and ask your neighbour or somebody from the outside who professes to be able to help. They have to be qualified. And I would only encourage you to do that if you really see persistent signs of low self-esteem or emotional distress. So these professionals would be pediatricians or a mental health professional. And enjoy the Kiki books. They are a beautiful indirect way of imparting the joy of self-confidence and the joy of unique skills. Because your child will, if they don't identify with Kiki as a girl, they might identify with Banjo or all the other boys in there. If they don't identify with her and her martial arts, Kung Fu Kitten style, they might identify with Piero, who is an outsider. They might identify with the mice, who are small but strong, or they might identify with the very organised Winston and Churchill. Every single character has a special, unique skill. Through stories, through storytelling, as you all know in my other articles, a child is transported out of their own setting and they can relate to all the themes and topics and whatever else we want to throw at them in there, all the skills and different mindsets we want them to learn. They can really revel in those when they are in the skin or the fur of a character that they love, that has nothing to do with their everyday life, but little do they know it actually does. Really enjoy those stories. I do encourage it. They are there for toddlers, so before 3, the picture books, the rhyming books, and they're also there, the chapter books for early readers. Please access those. Or there's the I Can journal. There's also the life skills course. I will leave the links in the comments below. Make use of these and enjoy journaling with your child. Do it maybe also with a neighbour and their friends, and have fun with it all. In summation, I would urge you to be vigilant. Don't look for problems where there aren't any. Be careful if your child is withdrawing or being very critical of themselves, very negative, and encourage them through open communication, enjoying the process, and becoming independent and self-reliant, and enjoying their individuality and their unique skills. I'll leave you with those thoughts, and I hope you go and explore some of these links and further resources that you can use to address these issues that are easily nipped in the bud when the children are younger, before they become a bigger problem. And remember, always promote that positive mindset. Our children are there to enjoy lives, and we are there to help them.